Here we go. Welcome back, everyone. This is Mike Brookman. I'm a technical sales specialist here at Radan, and let's just dive right in. Pop open the software here. Now, as this opens, what we're going to talk about today happens right away, right when you first open the software, right here. This is where you need to make that decision. So, that little story time before we get going. I was asked by one of our sales guys to kind of do a quick video to demonstrate the difference between traditional and projects. And you might be thinking, why, I didn't realize there was a different way to do besides projects. And you might be on the right track. We've had projects around for quite a while, but there still is a way to do things in a traditional manner. Now, one of the things I really like about our software is we are continually adding things, functionality to the software, but we generally don't take things away. And this is a perfect example of that. So let me get rid of my ugly mug and we will dive right in. So once you have this page up, when you click on Nest, you get this pop up to come up. And a lot of you may be thinking, that looks familiar. Give it a name. And that's right. You give it a name and it launches your project. You could even select template, and that's going to pre-populate some system defaults and some starting points for where you generally like to begin. But if you close this, your icons up here look a little bit different, specifically these two. Now, we're going to walk through the steps of how to do it this way, and then we're going to go through projects. And I'll try not to be so opinionated on how this is the old way versus the new way. And we're going to start and do this with the multi-part nester. We'll do the multi-part nester in both. When I open this up, I get the same looking window, right? And there again, the two things that are being isolated from this is the parts were pulled away and the sheets were pulled away. And you'll notice why almost immediately if you do things in projects. So for those of you who are not doing things in projects, you are well aware you have the ability to be able to bring in Radan part files or DXFs. If I click on this, I can browse out. We'll just grab a handful here down to maybe that one. Open. We're prompted then to say how many do we want. Maybe we'll go with, I don't know, let's go with 25. And we'll click OK. And since these are Radan part files, it knows the material, knows if I've adjusted orientations of how it can be nested. As we bring these in, we'll just stick with 25 on all of them. And when we get to the bottom, we've finished our list. Now, that's great. And then we can go to output options. Here, we'll need to give this collection of nests a name. So I'm just going to give it my name. We need to tell it where we want to start. So this will be that P number. So project or program or whatever it is that you guys are thinking P stands for, it's going to be that number. So P1, P2, etc. And then a location, I think I said that already, but where you want these to be stored. Nesting options, this generally hasn't changed. We still want to do true shape. We still want to match material because we have two different types of thicknesses in our nest at the moment. We still want to be cautious if we have etching or open profiles. All of this stuff here on this page, pretty much still intact. Sheets, however, again, this is one that was pulled away. So notice we have the options to do a single sheet, which we don't want to do because we have mild steel 060 and 135. We still have the ability to do drawings, which if you had a part that you want to nest to or an irregular shape or something that you drew. And we still have the ability to do multi-sheets, which is what we want to do today. Now, I could play dumb, and when I go here and click Add Sheets, I could casually forget what type of material I had, but I won't do that. I know that I have 060 and maybe want to use 5x8s. I want to be unlimited because I want Radan to tell me how many we need to use. And I'm going to add that to my prompt in the back. We also have, we could do this for all of them, and I think we'll just do that. So we'll say 4x8, add, 4x10, add, 5x10, add. And then we'll switch to my 135. All I have in there is 5x8, or sorry, excuse me, 5x10. And then we'll close. So now I've got sheets and I've got parts. Clearances, remnants, and automation are unchanged. I shouldn't say that because clearances, yep, clearances, remnants, automation, unchanged from traditional to working with a project. So from there, I simply just need to go to run my nester. And it'll think about this for a little bit, and eventually it'll come up with the report screen, essentially telling us this is what we've done. There we go. With no cuts, we've got nested eight nests, 22 sheets, 250 parts. I'll click OK. And it opens it up to my last sheet. I've got these radio buttons up here now, so I can zoom up to the first sheet. Notice now I'm on P1. And then I can, we don't necessarily care about the nesting at the moment. This is on our mild steel 135. We just didn't have a lot of parts for mild steel 135. Mild steel 060, this nest's looking pretty good. We have sheet utilization of 85.5. And we just kind of roll through. So it used a 4x10, another 4x10, 11 sheets of 5x10 for this arrangement. So this is about what we would expect. You know, if you were running Radan in 2012, 2015 maybe, this is how you would do it. If you want to run this again, you would come back up here to the multi-part nester. Notice all my parts are still here. All of my quantities are still there. My nesting name is still there, and it's telling me the next nest number is going to be 9. If I ran this with that, if I run this again, I should probably get the same results. I'm going to get 8 nests, 22 sheets, 250 parts, all nested, and then they'll be connected to this arrangement. Similar to how, I mean, this is maybe the foresight of how we thought projects would work. But notice now I'm on P16. If I jump to the front, I'm in P1. Remember what P1 looks like. And then as we go to P8 was the last of this run. Now P9 was the beginning of the next run. It's the same as P1. And then the next 7 nests are all going to look the same as the previous. More than likely, I should get the same results. If I didn't change any of my part mix or my clearances or anything to my sheets, I should have gotten the same results. And that has always been an interesting conundrum because it doesn't take away the need. And that's kind of where things really starting to change when you go to a project. So we're going to run this same example, but in a project now. And then you guys can maybe see one of the big differences that I think makes projects much better. So I just simply clicked on new, and it gives me this project window. And I'm going to call it Mike's Nest. I guess Mike Nest. And I'm going to click OK. Now, for those of you who have used Radan 1 year ago, this is probably exactly how you've always seen it. Remember those 2 buttons up here where we had single part and multi-part nest? Well, now they're down here. So we've got single part and we've got multi-part. We click on multi-part to kind of look at the settings, output options. Notice we don't have a parts tab anymore. That's completely gone. Nesting options, like I mentioned, they're still all the same. Sheets, a little bit different. If I had some sheets in my project, they would be populated here, but we do not manage them here. The clearances, remnants, and automation are all carried through the same. So if we cancel this for a moment, these 2 guys, Radan part files and DXFs, used to live right up here next to those 4 icons have all moved down here. So parts, DXFs, single sheets, multi-part sheet, right here. If I click on this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab down to, I think we went to duck panel, grab that. We're still, this window still looks the same. Still going to do 25. Since these are Radan part files, it still will remember the material type and thickness and any type of orientations I have saved with my symbol file. Now I've got this grouping of parts down here, which we can do a lot of different things with. We can look at them as tiles. We can see what the parts all look like, relatively easy. We can just have a thumbnail of the part. We can do details. That's how I like it. And we can break it up maybe by material type and thickness. So if we have 2 like we do today, we can see where the list starts and ends for those particular material types. On the nester then, I remember when we had to do sheets, if I just click on the sheets tab, that's where this has ended up from the multi-part nester. The parts have been completely extracted, and it's here. Here's the sheets. It automatically brought in the sheets from my standard sheets library, matching the parts that I have. So I don't have to pick and choose them. I don't have to remember that I had 2 different thicknesses or 10 different thicknesses and different kinds of material types. It does that for me. If I don't want to use a particular sheet, that's fine. I can right click it and I can go exclude from nester. It won't have access to be able to use it, but I'll leave that on because we had it on before. And then if I run the nester, this is, again, one of the biggest differences that we have. The project runs completely on part need. Notice I'm getting this indicators as the nester kicks off and runs. And the result's probably going to be the same, more than likely. The nesting engine algorithm behind the scenes probably hasn't changed. Nope, 8, 22 sheets, 250 each of all of our parts are done. But I also have all these green checks on my parts. And if I go to run it again, there's nothing to run. It tells me that all my parts are finished. If I delete one of the nests, all of my parts that are on that sheet go back, and then I can nest them again. So what happened here was it's just a better way to visibly see what you're doing, right? We can turn them off. We can say, no, I don't want to see that. And then all this looks kind of like how it looked before. Those radial buttons are back engaged, so we can go back and forth and we can see them like we did in the past. But we don't have accessibility like we did in the past, where we see the parts list, we see the nests that were generated all right at our fingertips. We can just drag and drop. We don't need to use the radial buttons up here at the top. We can just move around nice and easy. And not only that, but if I bring this window over, here's where we dumped all those nests. There's no connection to the parts list. It's just the nest that we made. So there's the first run down to 8, the second run down to 16. That's the old way. It just continues to make over and over and over. Here's the new way. We had to give it a name when we started that project. It made a folder. And then in that folder, it put my nests. There's my nests. Any remnants I would have made if I made any. And then I had this RPD file. And what that does is I can open this right from here. Or I can have Radan open. I can drag this in. I can go to open. I can browse to it. And it collects all this data right here, right in a nice little tight little bundle. Now, for you traditionalists who say, yeah, I can do that too, you could save what we called an RNS file, which is basically a parts list, and you could bring that in and you could rerun the nester. But this isn't a debate, I guess, back and forth between what's best. It's just a demonstration of 2 things, in my opinion. One, the beauty of Radan to be able to allow old functionality to still exist. And 2, the growth that we have to be able to see that here you can still do this, but here's another option that you can do. And then obviously, in my opinion, this looks much better. Hopefully that carried through pretty well, and you guys kind of get the differences between the 2. You can see how we did it in the past and how we are doing it in the future. With all that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this one. This has been a great time for me. Please consider subscribing to the Radan guys, and we'll see you guys in the next one.